Okay, so welcome back to my channel. Okay, this is going to be, I keep saying a quick recap, but as quickly as possible, of Absentia Season 1, Episode 8, Brave Boy. Okay, so last episode ended with Nick finding out that Alice and Flynn had been abducted. And so this episode opens with they're processing the scene. And Ella's sister is there and she loses it. She attacks Nick and it's all his fault. And why didn't you believe her? And it's Emily. Emily did it. And da 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 da. And so they try their best, to console her. And eventually he walks out onto the front. And of course, the front yard is just swarming with reporters. And so he basically asked the public to help him because at this point he's done. He's done believing Emily about her involvement, and he at this point he just wants his wife and his son back. So he didn't. Initially he didn't name her, but he basically said that the person know who they are. I know they're watching this. Please return my da 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 da. And then eventually he did say. Eventually he did say her name. Okay, but at this point, Emily doesn't know this, so Emily is still at the I'm not even sure, it's like an abandoned building where I guess homeless people go in to find shelter, and she was there, and she was still listening to the tapes, and she went on something triggered. She got some information from the tapes, and she was kind of trying to research it on her phone, and then of course there's this alert that says, "Oh, this is about his plea to the public," and so she clicks on it, and that's when she finds out that Flynn and Alice was abducted, and that he's accusing her. So she loses. Okay, because at this point he's the only person that's been consistent. He's the only person that's been in her corner trying to help her, and now at this point she feels like her one ally is no more. Like he's he's hurt and upset, and all. At this point he's focused on getting his family back. So she has a kind of a mini breakdown. And so you flash to Alice and Flynn. So Alice wakes up first, and it was obvious that they were drugged. So she wakes up first, and she's in this room. It's dark. It looks like a basement of some sort. And so she's trying to get her bearings, and then she looks over and she sees Flynn. Flynn is still out. And so she goes over to him to try to wake him up, to bring him to, and eventually he does. And of course, when you wake up in a strange place, you're locked in this dungeon, and so they're scared. And Flynn is like, "I want to go home," and what's going on? And she's trying to console him. And the person walks in and initially brings them water. And it's all kind of in the shadows. So, and the way they're dressed, I think it's done that way so you don't know if it's a man or a woman. So it's like these baggy kind of clothes and this creepy mask, and so you can't really tell right now whether it's a man or a woman. And so she obviously gave it to Flynn so he can drink. And then eventually the person came back in and gave them food, and it was like some bread that was bad. I don't know if she said it, she kind of looked at the bread before she gave it to him, because she, gave him, I guess, the better piece. And it was obvious that they had been drugged because, she was starting to experience some auditory and visual issues. And it was almost like she was paralyzed, like she couldn't really move. And so she kind of opens her eyes. She opens her eyes and she sees the person in the room, and they take Flynn. And of course, she's panicked, but whatever was in that bread that he gave them, it didn't allow her to put up much of a defense. And so, you see Flynn, and he's standing in the room with this person. The person is like, "Okay, you're going to have to choose. It's going to be you or her." And Flynn, he kind of stood there for a while. And Flynn basically, he chose himself. And so the next thing you know, you see them locking him into something, and when it kind of panned out, you can see that it was like a glass coffin, much like the coffin that Emily was in when she was filled with water. And so that's basically what was happening. He turned on the water, and water starts rushing in, and of course Flynn starts to panic. Fortunately, eventually they take him back to the room. He's soaking wet, And she's looking at like basically trying to figure out what happened, and he basically lets her know that I had to choose between you or me, and I chose myself, and that's why he was soaking wet. So of course she's freaking out. She's starts to cry, and then she just holds him because he could have died, and it was I mean I can imagine it was just a scary situation. Okay, so Jack is being released from prison because, of course, they took him into custody for helping Emily. And he said your bail was paid. And so when he left, the police officer was like, okay, watch your back out there. So I'm like, what? What are you talking about? What's going on? And so he finds out that it was a reporter, actually, that posted his bail because she wanted to tell Emily's side of the story. So she bailed him out basically so she can get the scoop. And of course Jack is like, So she said, you don't have to make a decision right now. Just think about it. He's basically like, I'll pay you back the money for the bail. She was like, no, don't even worry about it. No pressure. But if you want to talk, here's my number. Da, da, da. And so he gets back home and he finds the burner phone and he calls Emily. And Emily he thinks that he's telling her something that she already knows. She already knew about. She started the news story, so she already knew that Flynn was taken. So she's obviously emotional, and she tells him that she has to find a guy named Charles. Charles was the kid who was part of the experiments that the Dr. Chen was doing, and so he goes to all the most unlikely person, right? So he ends up going to his dad, and I don't know what is going on with them, but so he ends up going to his dad for help. So I'm kind of jumping around a little bit. So Ericsson, at this point, they're still trying to ID the remains. And so they find out that one of the remains is Dr. Chen, and they then make the connection to the orphanage and to the MIT and his and other things like that. And so they they find out that he has a brother Eric, who Emily talked to in the last episode. And so Nick and Tommy go to talk to Eric, and so Eric is like, so they, of course, they flash their badge and then for who they are, and he was like, "Oh, you guys are being thorough." And so, of course, they're standing there confused, like, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Yeah, the last person, I talked to, was asking me about the case," and they was like, "Well, who was he told?" And so he mentioned telling them that Emily came, was asking them about the case. He told them about the storage unit. They go to the storage unit and go in, and of course, at this point, they're now processing the storage unit to kind of find out whatever they can find out. And so he fast to Jack. Jack goes to his father, and I'm like, what is going on with him? Did he find out he was dying or something? Because he had been like giving Jack hell. And so, but he's like, Jack was telling him that he needed help, that he's trying to help Emily. And so Warren, their father, was like, I'm so proud of you, and I'm glad you're trying to help her, and I'm sorry about how I treated you. And, at this point, Jack is like, it's water and bridge. He's like, no, he said, no, now, let's talk about it. For whatever reason, he wanted to talk about it. I don't understand why, but, and Jack basically said that I always felt like I was replaced. Like, when she came into the family, I felt like I no longer had a place in the family. And they had a similar dynamic to a lot of families, and whether it's intentional or not, it does have an impact on, the children and the people involved. And basically, Jack was the good kid. Emily was the problem child, because of her background. And so because they felt that Jack was the good kid, they felt like he didn't need as much attention. And so, of course, what happens in these situations, it's usually the problem child that gets all the attention, and the good child kind of feels left out. And that was basically the situation. The father was like, I always felt like you were always basically on point and doing what you were supposed to be doing. She was the one that was struggling, and so basically we felt like you were okay, and that which is why we focused our attention on her. And I'm sorry, if you ever felt like basically unloved, or that we didn't care as much about you, and da 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 da. And Jack was like, you know what, I'm not gonna it's fine, whatever. So Warren said he had a plan, and so his plan was he met with one of his friends. Warren is a retired cop, and so he goes to the park. His friend's sitting there feeding the birds, and he said, "I need you to do me a favor." And then it's for Emily. He said, "Are you going to help me?" And the guy was like, "Of course I'm going to help you." And said, "Do you still have your connects at family services or something of that nature?" He said, "Yeah." So he said, "Can you give them a call for me?" He said, "Yeah." So he kept feeding birds, and Warren was like, "Okay, well, are you gonna do it now?" He said, "I'm gonna do it." Well, basically, I'm gonna do it when I do it. Like, don't. Look, I'm busy. I already got my agenda. I'm gonna sit my ass on this bench and feed these birds until I get tired of doing it, and then I'll make you a call. But so basically, he needed him to find out everything he could find out about Charles. And so they get whatever information they need to find out. And so you see Jack is taking Warren back to. I think he lives in an assisted living kind of facility. He has his own apartment, but it's an apartment building, but it's a assisted. They have a medical staff there. And so he took Warren home, got him settled. Something was going on with him. I think his blood pressure, something was going up. And so the nurse, when it was coming out of the apartment and basically telling Jack, he needs to relax because Jack was in the hallway. He needs to, relax. We can't have him all stressed out and stuff like that. And of course, Jack was like, I understand that. So the nurse leaves. And then Nick comes around the corner and was basically like, Jack, where is she? What is going on? You've been helping her. She got my wife and my son. I want to know what the hell is going on. And of course, Jack was like, deep down that she did not take Flynn and Alice. And I don't, he's not going to help. I'm not going to help you, or I'm just not going to help you. And so, of course, he barges in, and Warren is sitting there at the table doing something. And of course, he was just outdone by Nick's gall because he hates Nick. Because he, like I said, in a couple of episodes ago, he basically felt like Nick gave up too fast looking for Emily. And so Nick is going back for like, where is she? I know you're helping her. She got my wife and kids. Da, 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 da. And Warren was basically like, you were never good enough for her. And she always ran circles around you. And she's still running circles around you. And I can't wait for this to all come to the end so that she can reveal you guys to be the morons that you are. And so, of course, Nick storms out to go on to meet Tommy. So he heads to the precinct, to Tommy's precinct, and Tommy's of course going through the box of tapes. And he's listening to, and he said, of all the tapes, he found one that was somewhat clear, and it was basically Chen doing this experiment, asking who they believe to be Charles. I think it's Charles, who was his favorite, was asking him to choose between him and subject B. And Crown eventually calls. So they go through, they're looking, so back at the FBI office, they're going through all the rest of the stuff, the paperwork and the file, to try to find out what's what. And so they come across Ericsson, finds in the file the mention of Charles. And so Crown calls Nick to let him know about Charles and that they did the research and found out that Charles is at this facility. And now, at this point, Emily also knows that Charles is at this facility. So you kind of imagine it's only a matter of time they're going to eventually be there at the same time, right? So you're like, okay, so what's going to happen? So, they go to the university first. So Nick and Tommy goes to university first to kind of find out what all Dr. Chen was working on. And so they were basically saying that his experiments were problematic, and that there was some rumor that he was working on a government, under some government contract doing these experiments. And like I said, it was only rumored. It was rumored. And so they eventually they make their way to the facility. And, of course, at this point, Emily is there. And she didn't convince some poor mentally ill man to get his robe so that she could sneak in, right? And I think she gave him a candy bar or some mess. And so, for whatever reason, this lady who was there kind of saw, it was another patient who kind of saw that Emily was out of place. And she was like, I know you're not supposed to be here, and da 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 da. And so basically she helped Emily created a distraction so Emily could get the keys so that she can get back to Charles, because they had Charles locked up because Charles was a dangerous guy. So they kept him quarantined away from everybody else. So she was able to get back there, and she saw he was having some kind of fit or seizures or something was going on with him. And so she called out to him, and he took off running. And he ran down some halls, through some doors, down to the basement. And so she runs, and she's running after him, and she loses him. So she gets down there, and this man, he comes out of nowhere. This is a huge guy, too. And he attacks her, and he basically is like, I know who you are. You're Emily. And so now she's fighting because she got this guy. He's like strangling her at this point. And so somehow she was able to get him off of her, and she's asking him about the experiments and who else was involved, and he was holding this book that he was obsessed with. So in this struggle, he dropped the book, and it was kind of off in the corner. He's trying to reach for this book, and she's asking him questions. He's still distracted by this book, trying to get this book. And it was another guy, a mentally ill guy, who saw this whole thing, and he started screaming like, Charles is loose, he's attacking a woman, he's fighting a woman. And so, but at this point, Tommy and Nick is there, and Tommy is at the front desk, and he's going through the visitors logs and whatever paperwork they have on Charles. And so Nick hears the guy screaming, Charles is loose, he's fighting a woman. Da, da, da. So he takes off running. And he catches up with Emily outside. So, of course, he has his gun drawn on her. And she still has her gun, but he doesn't know yet because her back is to him. And he's basically telling her to turn around and not to move. Da, da, da. So she whips around, and she has her gun on him. And so he's like, why are you doing this? I'm not, this is not going to, I'm not. Basically, he's letting her know that I don't believe in you anymore. I want my wife and my son back. And she was like, I'm trying to get them back. And he was like, he basically let her know he wasn't going to let her go. And so there was a standoff for a minute. And I thought, for a minute, I was like, okay, he's going to probably lower his gun and let her go. And then now he's going to have to explain this shit to Tommy. And Tommy's about sick of Nick and this whole thing between him and Emily. But no, she actually shoots Nick in the shoulder and runs off. So it's like, girl, oh my God, girl. It's like, even if you don't have a part in this, you've committed so many crimes at this point. Now you've actually shot an active FBI agent. So she takes off, and he's laid out in the snow with the bullet in his arm. And that's basically how this episode ends. So we still don't know what the hell, who did what and why and what's going on. So it's only 2 episodes left. So I'm really interested to see how all these people are going to be connected and tied. So I'm going to end this here, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.